That's when I knew my daughter-in-law wanted me declared insane. I don't know what made me look up at that exact moment. Maybe it was the way Vanessa's voice dropped when she thought I'd left the room. Maybe it was the sixth sense you develop after 68 years of reading people. But there I stood, frozen in my own hallway on Christmas Eve, listening to my son's wife schedule what she called a competency evaluation for me. "Yes, Dr. Morrison, Christmas morning would be perfect," she whispered into her phone. "She'll be confused from all the excitement. It'll look natural. We need documentation that she can't manage her own affairs anymore." My hand trembled on the doorframe. This was the woman who'd hugged me 3 hours ago, who'd insisted on helping me hang the stockings, who'd called me mom with such warmth I'd almost forgotten she'd only married into this family 2 years ago. I stepped backward silently, my heart pounding so hard I was sure she'd hear it. But Vanessa was too focused on her call, too confident in her plan to notice me. I made it to my bedroom and closed the door with shaking hands. Let me back up. My name is Margaret. I'm 68 years old, and I've been a widow for 14 months. My husband Thomas died of a heart attack, sudden and devastating, leaving me alone in the house we'd shared for 40 years in Portland, Oregon. We'd done well for ourselves. Thomas had been a successful architect, and I'd taught English literature at the university for 30 years before retiring. We had savings, investments, and a home worth well over $1 million in Portland's current market. We also had one son, Richard. He'd married Vanessa 2 years before Thomas died, a whirlwind courtship that had surprised us both. Vanessa was beautiful, charming, and she seemed to adore Richard. She was attentive to me and Thomas, always volunteering to help, always interested in our lives. Looking back now, I could see the signs I'd missed, the way her eyes would linger on my jewelry, how she'd ask detailed questions about our investments, our property taxes, the trust Thomas and I had set up, how she'd started suggesting, gently at first, that this big house was too much for me to manage alone. After Thomas died, those suggestions became more frequent, more insistent. "You seem forgetful lately, Mom," Vanessa would say with concern in her voice. "Just yesterday you couldn't remember where you put your reading glasses." They'd been on top of my head. I'd been wearing them. "Maybe we should think about somewhere with less responsibility," Richard would add, his eyes not quite meeting mine. "Somewhere with support staff. For your own safety." I'd brushed it off. Grief does make you forgetful. I was adjusting to life without Thomas, and yes, sometimes I was scattered, but I wasn't losing my mind. I paid my bills on time, managed my investments, drove without incident, kept up with my book club and volunteer work at the library. But Vanessa was persistent. She'd started coming over more often, always with Richard. She'd reorganized my kitchen to help me find things easier. She'd taken over my grocery shopping so I wouldn't have to drive in bad weather. She'd insisted on updating my contact list in case of emergency. And she'd been asking me to sign things. "Just updating your emergency contacts at the doctor's office? Mom," she'd say, sliding papers across my kitchen table. "And this is for the pharmacy, so Richard can pick up your prescriptions." I'd sign them. Why wouldn't I? She was family. She was helping. But that overheard phone call on Christmas Eve changed everything. After I closed my bedroom door, I sat on the edge of my bed and forced myself to think clearly. A competency evaluation. Documentation that I couldn't manage my own affairs. Why would Vanessa want that, unless? My eyes fell on the stack of papers on my nightstand. Documents Vanessa had brought over last week, asking me to sign them for estate planning purposes. I'd been meaning to read them carefully, but she'd been so casual about it, so reassuring. "Just standard stuff Thomas would have wanted you to update," she'd said. I picked up the papers with trembling hands and actually read them this time. Power of attorney, financial management, healthcare decisions, all granting Richard and Vanessa complete control over my assets and medical care. The documents I'd already signed weeks ago, trusting Vanessa's explanation that they were just emergency backups. My blood ran cold. If I was declared mentally incompetent, these documents would allow them to take over everything. My house, my savings, my investments, everything Thomas and I had worked 40 years to build. They could move me into a facility, sell my home, and I'd have no legal standing to stop them. I sat there in my bedroom, listening to the sounds of my family downstairs preparing for Christmas Eve dinner. My granddaughter Sophie's laugh drifted up the stairs. She was 22, home from law school at Berkeley for the holidays. She was the one bright spot in all this. The one person who still treated me like I had a functioning brain. That's when I made my decision. If Vanessa wanted to play games with documentation and legal manipulation, I could play too, but I'd play smarter. I spent Christmas Eve pretending everything was normal. I smiled through dinner, laughed at Sophie's stories about her professors, admired the tree Richard had helped me decorate, and I watched Vanessa, really watched her. I saw how she monitored my wine intake, making sure I had several glasses, how she kept asking me questions, trying to catch me in confusion. Mom, what year did you and Dad get married? Mom, what's Sophie's major again? Mom, didn't you already tell us that story? She was building a narrative, setting the stage for tomorrow's evaluation. After everyone went to bed, I stayed up late. I went through every document I'd signed in the past 6 months, photographing each one with my phone. Sophie had taught me how to use the camera and photo storage, insisting I needed to be tech-savvy. Thank God for her. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I went through Vanessa's purse. She'd left it on the kitchen counter, and I felt like a criminal rifling through it. But there, tucked in a side pocket, I found her phone. She'd used Richard's birthday as the password. I'd seen her unlock it dozens of times. My hands shook as I scrolled through her messages. What I found made me feel physically sick. Texts to someone named Monica. The old lady is signing everything I put in front of her. She's so trusting it's almost sad. Once Morrison does the eval tomorrow, we can start the process. To someone named Dr. Morrison. Remember, we need documentation of confusion, memory loss, inability to manage daily tasks. I'll make sure she's flustered when you arrive. To a realtor, how fast can we list a property once we have POA? Looking at a house in Lake Oswego that would be perfect. To Richard, your mom seems sharper today. Make sure you tell Morrison about the incidents we discussed. The more examples of confusion, the better. I photographed everything, every single text message. Then I carefully put her phone back exactly where I'd found it. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, my mind racing. This was my son's wife, the mother of my future grandchildren. How could she be so calculating, so cruel? And Richard, was he fully on board with this? Or was Vanessa manipulating him too? Christmas morning arrived with its usual chaos. Sophie bounded downstairs early, excited despite being 22. Richard and Vanessa emerged around 8, Vanessa already dressed and made up, which was unusual for a lazy holiday morning. Mom, I invited a friend to stop by this morning, Vanessa said casually over coffee. Dr. Morrison, she's a geriatric specialist. She mentioned she makes house calls for initial consultations, and I thought since she was in the area anyway. That's not necessary, I said calmly. I'm not interested in a geriatric specialist. Vanessa's smile tightened. But Mom, it's just a friendly chat. She's lovely, and it would be good for you to have a relationship with someone who understands the challenges of aging. I said no, Vanessa. Richard looked uncomfortable. Mom, Vanessa's just trying to help. You have been more forgetful lately, and we worry. Give me one example, I said, looking directly at him. One specific example of when I've been genuinely confused or forgetful in a way that concerns you. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Well, there was, Vanessa mentioned. I mentioned several instances. Vanessa cut in smoothly. Like last week when you couldn't remember our dinner plans. We didn't have dinner plans last week, I said. You called and asked if you could come over. I said yes. Then you arrived and acted surprised that I hadn't cooked a meal, suggesting I'd forgotten you were coming for dinner. Sophie looked up from her phone, suddenly paying attention. Vanessa laughed, but it sounded forced. Mom, that's exactly what I mean. You're confused about what we discussed. No, I said firmly. You're creating confusion where none exists, and I know why. The doorbell rang. Vanessa's face lit up. That'll be Dr. Morrison. Sophie, I said, would you please answer the door and tell Dr. Morrison that her services aren't needed, and that if she enters this house without my explicit consent, she'll be trespassing. Sophie stood up immediately, her law school training kicking in. On it, Grandma. Vanessa's mask slipped. For just a moment, I saw pure fury in her eyes. Richard, talk to your mother. She's being completely unreasonable. I'm being unreasonable? I set down my coffee cup carefully. I found your phone last night, Vanessa. I read your messages. The room went silent. Richard looked confused. What messages? I pulled out my phone and pulled up the photos I'd taken. The messages to Monica about me being so trusting. It's almost sad. The texts to Dr. Morrison coordinating this little ambush. The messages to a realtor about selling my house. The messages to Richard about fabricating incidents of confusion. Richard's face went pale. Vanessa, what is she talking about? She went through my private phone. Vanessa's voice was shrill now. That's a violation of what? I'm in my own home. Your phone was lying on my kitchen counter. I looked at my son. Richard, did you know about the texts to Dr. Morrison? About the plan to have me evaluated and declared incompetent? No, I thought this was just a wellness check, Vanessa said. Vanessa's been planning to take control of my assets, I said quietly. The POA documents she had me sign. This evaluation, all of it. Once I was declared incompetent, she could move me into a facility, sell this house, and take everything your father and I built. Richard stood up, his face a mixture of shock and growing anger. Vanessa, your mother is paranoid, Vanessa said, but her voice wavered. She's clearly not thinking straight. This just proves she needs help. I have screenshots of your messages, I said. I also have copies of every document you've had me sign. And I called my attorney this morning before anyone woke up. She's reviewing everything and will be here at noon. That was a lie. I hadn't called anyone yet, but Vanessa didn't know that. Sophie came back into the room, her expression serious. Dr. Morrison left. She seemed pretty embarrassed when I explained that Grandma hadn't consented to any evaluation. She looked at her father. Dad? What's going on? Richard was staring at Vanessa like he'd never seen her before. Tell me the truth. Now. Vanessa's composure crumbled. You don't understand the pressure we're under. Your mother is sitting on a fortune in this house while we're struggling with my student loans, the mortgage, your job barely covering expenses, so you thought you'd have my mother declared insane to solve our money problems? Richard's voice was ice. She doesn't need all this space. She's lonely here. She'd be happier somewhere smaller, and we could get out. Richard's voice was shaking. Get out of my mother's house right now. Richard, please, get out. Vanessa looked at me, and I saw calculation in her eyes even then. This isn't over, Margaret. You're going to need help eventually. And when I do, it won't be from you, I said. And those POA documents you had me sign, my attorney will be nullifying them, every single one. After Vanessa left, Richard collapsed onto the couch, his head in his hands. Mom, I'm so sorry. I knew she was worried about money, but I didn't know. I should have seen. Sophie sat beside him, then looked at me. Grandma, what you did was badass, but we need to make this official. Let me call my professor. She specializes in elder law. We need to document everything, get statements while it's fresh, and make sure Vanessa can't try this again with different tactics. That's when I started crying. Not from fear or sadness, but from relief. My granddaughter believed me. My son, once he saw the evidence, believed me. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. I'd been right to trust my instincts. The next few weeks were a blur of legal activity. My attorney did nullify all the POA documents. We discovered that Vanessa had also forged my signature on documents attempting to add herself to my bank accounts. The bank manager had flagged them as suspicious and called me, but Vanessa had intercepted the call and told them it was a mistake. That bank manager's diligence saved me. His name was Martin, and he'd known Thomas for years. He'd thought something felt off about the whole situation and had documented every interaction with Vanessa. We filed a police report. The district attorney decided to prosecute for fraud and attempted financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Vanessa hired a lawyer and tried to claim she'd been trying to help me, that she'd been concerned about my welfare. But the text messages told a different story. Richard filed for divorce. That was the hardest part for me, watching my son's marriage dissolve. But he was firm about it. She tried to hurt you, Mom. She was willing to have you locked away in a facility to get your money. That's not someone I can spend my life with. Sophie moved back home after graduating law school. Just temporarily, Grandma, she said, until I pass the bar and get a job. Plus, someone needs to make sure you stay safe. But here's what I learned through all of this, and I want you to know this if you're experiencing anything similar. Trust your instincts. That voice in your head telling you something's wrong, listen to it. I almost didn't. I almost kept signing documents and accepting Vanessa's help because I wanted to believe family would never hurt me. Document everything. Every paper you sign, every conversation that feels off, every helpful suggestion that doesn't sit right. I photographed those text messages and documents, and that evidence was the difference between being believed and being dismissed as a confused old woman. You're not invisible. Vanessa counted on people assuming I was declining, that I was forgetful and confused just because I was 68 and recently widowed. She weaponized ageism against me. Don't let anyone do that to you. Don't sign anything without your own attorney reviewing it. I don't care if it's your own child asking. I don't care if they say it's urgent or just routine. If someone is pressuring you to sign quickly, that's a red flag. And here's the most important thing. Aging doesn't mean you stop being capable of protecting yourself. It doesn't mean you have to hand over your autonomy to anyone. You have rights. You have agency. You have the power to say no. I still live in my house in Portland. Sophie did pass the bar and now practices elder law, inspired by what happened to me. She says cases like mine are far more common than people realize. Adult children, sometimes with the best intentions, and sometimes with the worst, try to take control of their aging parents' lives and assets. Richard is rebuilding his life. He's dating someone new, someone who works as a nurse and has no interest in my financial situation whatsoever. We talk every week, and he's been to therapy to process what happened. He feels guilty, but I've told him he was manipulated too. As for Vanessa, she pleaded guilty to attempted fraud in exchange for probation and community service. She has a restraining order keeping her away from me. She's moved to California, and I hope I never see her again. But sometimes, late at night, I think about how close I came. If I hadn't overheard that phone call, if I hadn't found those text messages, if I hadn't trusted my instincts enough to investigate, I might be sitting in a care facility right now, watching strangers sell off everything Thomas and I built together. That Christmas Eve phone call saved my life, or at least it saved the life I wanted to keep living. Independent, capable, and in control of my own choices. I'm 70 now. I still drive, still volunteer at the library, still host book club in my living room. I travel when I want to. I manage my own finances. I make my own decisions. And I'm teaching other seniors in my community about the warning signs of financial exploitation. Sophie and I give talks at senior centers about protecting yourself, about recognizing manipulation, about the legal tools available to maintain your autonomy. Because here's what I want every older person to know. Your age doesn't make you vulnerable. It makes you experienced. It makes you wise. And if someone is trying to convince you otherwise, trying to make you doubt your own competence, trying to rush you into signing away your rights, that person does not have your best interests at heart. Listen to that voice. Trust yourself. And don't be afraid to fight back. You're not too old to protect yourself. You're not too old to say no. And you're definitely not too old to refuse to be a victim. I learned that at 68, and it's a lesson I'll carry for the rest of my life.